Alright, probably turned it off a minute too soon. So this is the second half of, this is really going to be the debate video, I guess. The other video is what it is on the Amendum channel. This will be the real deal. Um, yeah, I just, I wanted to say on the other video on the Amendum channel that I've been making videos on this channel. But I guess there's no point in doing it now, is there? No. I have to wait till the what the fuck or whatever. Alright, so, Nick, it's basically just explaining that he's not suicidal. This isn't about suicide. It's just about describing the reality. Now, he gave it a context that sort of irritated me in the sense that he almost described it as genetic. It's almost like our perspective is some sort of genetic function, like our hair, or our eyes, or our noses, or our penises, that it's some sort of, it's the evolution of the mechanics. But he left a little bit of room for saying the right thing, that this is about the evolution of intelligence, is what I would argue. We are the product of what happens when you have 10,000 years to glean the truth about the world. You get rid of the God-bothering nonsense. You get the rubbish out of your way. You get all the little bouncing cartoons out of your vision, and you start looking at it for what it is. And we have the information now. We have the science now to be able to understand the context of this stuff. And we can't really even understand it. I mean, how do you even understand 1,000,000 years? And we've got to talk in scales of hundreds of millions. It's just an incredible, it's difficult to put that in any kind of rational perspective, from a individual human perspective. But anyway, the point is that we have gained intelligence, and that's what it's memes that are evolving. It's ideas that are evolving. I mean, it started maybe with Plato and Aristotle and all that crap, and the idea of thinking, the idea of attempting to do something called logic. But the logic, as I've said, is in the world itself. The triangles, the geometry, the algebra, it's all out in the world as a reality. And the relationship between our existence and a DNA molecule is just as real a relationship as the angles and lengths and dimensions of this geometry that's out there. These are fixed rules. And we can understand concepts like attraction and repulsion. We can understand how they grew into this stuff. We can understand how there would be an advantage of having a brain that analyzed its own creations, that put its own creations into perspective, and then reacted to that mixture of reality and memory. We can conceptualize all this stuff and understand it and see it. And it's not a genetic function. I'm not a product of my genetics. I'm a product of environmental circumstances where I was able to see these truths very early, and I was very able to think them through, and I didn't get sucked into the more populist memes. I stayed an outsider. I stayed independent of that propaganda. I survived the propaganda, let's say. And other people have to do it the harder way, where they get caught up in it and then they have to beat that stuff out of their head and accept some new reality, which I would argue is probably a harder task. Let's see. So yeah, we've sort of gone through this stuff, and I'm just going to argue this is more about the facts, the reality, the truth, the knowledge, the understanding evolving. Human understanding is evolving, and it's going to be harder and harder for the cartoon memes to compete with this hard, real meme. As long as this gets an audience, as long as people can hear this conversation, they're not going to find it undaunting. They're not going to find it easy to argue with. And I think that's probably why the arguments have been so fucking trivial, have been so silly. Oh, go kill yourself. Yeah, that's how somebody responds to the problem. You describe there's a fire burning in the road, and you're saying, what do we do about it? And they say, go kill yourself. And that's supposed to make sense to you. Oh, I can fix the problem by killing myself? That's the solution to the problem? The dilemma is corrected? A billion years of, well, hundreds of millions of years of sentient life at jeopardy is solved by me killing myself? I mean, to come up with an argument that's stupid. You're just saying, oh, what are we even conversing with these people? But we're obviously getting to them. I mean, if this is the desperate level of their argument, I mean, if they have to resort to, saying your mama's ugly, you've won the argument. That they can't come up with anything better than that, you know, to personalize it, because you might say it is irresponsible to have children in a world that is this sloppy, to put eggs in such a poorly constructed nest, that somehow you've made a personal offense. You've basically said you smell. No, you've just stated a fact that you believe it is an act of selfish irresponsibility, not to make a better world before you put people in it. And if you're going to just borrow on their future, to live your more comfortable life, then you're triple, double, quadruple fail assholes. And we have a right to point that out, without you coming back with some sort of hurt feelings. Oh, well, how dare you attack the size of my fat belly? That's not what took place, buttheads. So anyway, all right. So I'll just to add to this, just to bring up some of the old stuff. I'm going to go back all the way back to the, lizard, monkey, human brain thing again. And that there's these elements to that this is what makes us. Is that we have this crude, fundamental structure that's built by the DNA. All right, that's going to get hungry every day. It's going to get horny now and then. Anyway, maybe every 15 minutes. Who knows? It's just going to do the function thing as an animal. It's going to have the appropriate desires, attractions, and repulsions that would tend to propel its genetics into the future. And then on top of that, we have this social conditioning, the kind of indirect conditioning that takes place where, as I'll give you the example, some elementary school teacher who you hate always wears the color yellow, and now for the rest of your life, you just don't like yellow. I mean, it just, makes your guts turn a little. So we get these prejudices and preferences piled on top of our native desire mechanism. So now the DNA creates the capacity to be addicted. The conditioning decides what you're going to be addicted to and what you're going to be repulsed by, what you're going to love and what you're going to hate. And a lot of that's going to be incredibly arbitrary, as in my yellow example. It's not going to be terribly rational, because we don't live in a terribly rational world. If we lived in the native world, in this kind of world, this consistent world, the relationships would be so much more direct, so they'd make so much more sense. So that conditioning wouldn't have so many aberrations as it ends up having in human beings, just because human beings live in weird social environments. We live in a zoo, essentially. It's just the truth. And if you raise an animal in a zoo, he's not going to be the same as he'd be if he was raised in the wild. It's just, it fucks with us, so to speak. All right, so then the last ingredient is this idea where, through our evolution, our brains changed subtly enough, where we did this slow maturation thing. The brain was, how it was oriented, what priorities were decided in terms of space the brain occupies, and this language development took place, strict language development. And through that, there was a little moment where it clicked, like Helen Keller. We went from being an animal to being capable of doing this civilization thing. And it was the language that made that possible. It wasn't some physical structure in the brain. A human being 1 million years ago, well, at least 500,000 years ago, was probably just as capable of being intelligent as you are. You could send it to school, it would become a civilized animal, it would be all of those things. And the only difference would have been this language thing. So it wasn't structure so much as it was the magic of that little language clicker. And so that was just one of those things, like sentience, like the ability to feel, that just changed it put the evolution, it was a step in evolution where it's a whole different plateau that you're on now. And language creates a different plateau because now intelligence can evolve. Now we can become mega smart. We can do a lot more than just stick a stick into a hole and pull a termite out. We can understand what the termite's doing. We can know how it's living. We can know what the stick is made out of. We can know its tensile strength. We can know all kinds of things that would be completely inaccessible if we didn't have this capacity to glean knowledge over thousands of years, put it in books, share it with each other, communicate with each other, bounce ideas off of each other, refine ideas through filtering with each other to define a truth. And so, yeah, those are the elements of our existence. The DNA, the conditioning, the emotional, the creation of the disposition of your addictions, and intelligence. And you have those three things to work with. And I would argue that it's just logically sensible. The intelligence can realize it without doing much thinking at all. That the one that has the real value is the intelligence, the one that does know what an isosceles triangle is, the one that does know that other human beings are likewise experiencing consciousness. The one that can do this, understanding the tree and the roots and the biology and the history, that's the one that's got that has to be valued over all the others. That's the one that's got real character. And when you ask that one an honest question and you answer the question honestly with that mechanism, not scheming, not trying to rationalize a defense for your prejudices, not trying to rationalize a defense for your preferences, not trying to rationalize a defense for your biology, but answer the questions honestly. And the memes take you to one place. The intelligence takes you to one place. This is unintelligent design. It's reckless and sloppy. We should have no expectation that this should function properly. This is a car put together by a monkey. I mean, it really is. It's just that ludicrous. There's no hope that you could give a monkey 1,000 parts that make up a car, let's say, and have the monkey put the car together correctly. There's just no hope of it. And that's how this was constructed. And we either reconstruct it to make it safe for consciousness, or at least minimally efficient in how it affects conscious sensitive beings, or we declare it a failure and end the experiment. To leave it as it is as malicious, disgusting, unintelligent, uncivilized as creating an experiment in a laboratory where little mice are given cancer every day by a machine. A little robot injects them with cancer. They, live horrible lives. Their fetuses are reproduced in a little mechanical device, and they're just kept fed into the maze and kept injected with cancer, and they just live out the dying process. It would be as malicious to leave this the way it is, to leave this job so unfinished. Would be as malicious as to create that experiment in a lab, then walk out the door and never return. I mean, we're responsible. We know of it. We are now culpable. You can't, once you know it's wrong to drink and drive, you can't friggin' come up with an excuse and say, no, I'm going to drink and drive. No, you're done. Once you know it's a probability equation that can create no good, yeah, you're done. You can't do it anymore. And once you're smart enough to just add up the basics of what's going on here, you're done. You can't excuse it anymore. You either fix it or you're an asshole. And if you can't fix it, like I said, then you draw the rational conclusion and say maybe it's time to turn the experiment off. All right? Either make the experiment work or you turn it off. But you don't leave it in this Frankenstein state and call yourself decent, civilized, intelligent, reasonable. No, you can't be any of those things and glorify this shit. Thank you very much. And such.